Today, we're going to talk about two things that could define the start of the Chicago Bulls rebuild. One, we got the hype for Caleb Williams getting completely out of control after Bulls Fest weekend, and I love to hear it, right? We're hearing more and more comps for Caleb Wilson compared to some of the greats. We've heard Tracy McGrady, Shawn Kemp, Pascal, Siakam, Kevin Garnett. We're going to talk a little bit about that and what does Caleb Wilson actually need to do in his rookie year, because it's not as much as what some of y'all think, but we're going to talk a little bit about that, right? And we're going to talk about, as well, Bryson Graham. There's been way too many fans and a lot of content creators that are trying to judge Bryson Graham's first offseason by his ability to make lopsided trades to stack picks when we need to update our thinking on the market, because that is not what the market is telling us is available now. Much like the lottery has changed and tanking has changed, so has the acquisition of picks for bad contracts. We're going to talk about a little bit about that as well and dive into the mailbag. All that plus more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go into this content for today, y'all. And the comparisons are just getting wild for Caleb Wilson. Absolutely wild for Caleb Wilson, but the excitement around him is not baseless, right? So, and I get it. When you get excited about a player, sometimes your thinking goes in crazy directions. And then when you have some actual analysts comparing his games to some of the greats, it gets even more exciting. And then you had the whole, Bulls Fest weekend thing, just his interaction with the fans, that picture that got posted, all like the hype around Caleb Wilson is growing there, right? Now, I do think in a way it's putting a little bit of unfair kind of pressure on his game before he has ever played an actual NBA game. There's some people that legitimately think Caleb Wilson is going to average 20, as a rookie. And while I'm not saying that it's outside the realm of possibility that that's going to happen, it's very unlikely, and it may not happen. And it doesn't mean that if Caleb Wilson has a normal rookie, season, that somehow it means that it's not a win, right? Or he's not progressing. And that's the thing that I want to show, right? Of course, we know that we saw some flashes from Caleb Wilson in Summer League. Flashes that, a lot of people critiqued his game about in the draft, and that's great, right? The Bulls may have drafted somebody with franchise player upside, and that is the part that for a lot of Bulls fans is going to be exciting. The comparisons are out of control, but the excitement is what's not out of control, and that's where I really want to put in this, right? Because the hype around Caleb Wilson has legitimate foundation, right? And while Summer League is nothing to get too far up or too far down about, I do think that the shot profile that he had in Summer League adds something that is going to excite fans. He scored at a high level. He shot the ball at 41% from three, right? Which that was one of the biggest knocks coming into it. He rebounded, he blocked shots, he generated steals, right? He got in transition, he finished, right? And the combination of all those things are now having people, both Bulls fans and the basketball world, reacting differently than how they were talking about Caleb Wilson in the draft combine. That's, again, just the reality of what's happening here. And so I think when you look at it now, and if you're going to look at that, this wasn't just a rookie getting hot or putting up a lot of shots. Right now, there was some of that. I'm not going to act like there wasn't. There was some of that, but it was a rookie showing 6 different ways that he can impact the game. And that's the biggest thing. Like, if you're talking about things that you want to see from Caleb Wilson, and we'll get into this in a minute, it's like find ways to impact every game. The jumper. If Caleb Wilson's jumper is legit right away, and that doesn't mean that he has to be elite with it, he can become that over time, but if it's just legit, that changes how you have to guard him completely. With shooting being one of his biggest question marks, and by draft analysts and everybody, right? If you become even a 32, 34% three-point shooter on decent volume, it becomes very interesting in your rookie year. But let's say you become a legitimate, in your rookie year, 35, 36, 37% three-point shooter. Your ceiling changes overnight for Caleb Wilson. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about that, because the ability to put the ball on the floor is still there. The transition finishing is still there. The cutting is still there. All those type of things, right? The finishing around the rim is still there, right? He doesn't need to replicate his 41% from three in summer league for it to completely change how defenses fundamentally have to guard him, right? And I think this 34 to 35% on respectable volume is a huge win in the rookie year for Caleb Wilson, right? Caleb's jumper does not need to be elite right away, but it does need to be real enough that defenses has to care and take notice. And that is what this could possibly be. And that's why, like I say, the hype is real, right? Then you go to ESPN, and when you look at it, they already forecasted him as very highly in the star path and one of the top three as far as long-term ceilings, which means that again, the hype is not just internally within Chicago. It's a different conversation when the hype around a player like Caleb Wilson becomes just about in your city, right? In the city that he plays. That's not what's happening here. So that means that it's growing outside of it. He was behind only AJ DeBonsta and Darren Peterson in long-term ceiling voting. And that was voted by NBA GMs and coaches, not ESPN analysts, because again, if it's ESPN analysts, I don't give a shit about it because ESPN analysts ain't called nothing right in years. So I do think that tells you that evaluators see the hype and they see the high-end traits around Caleb Wilson, and they're saying that doesn't feel phony, that doesn't feel fake, it doesn't feel forced, right? Again, bigger than summer league hype. But one thing that I always got to bring it back in, right? Because I like talking about the big side, the huge upside of things, but we got to talk about the reality of it too, is that potential superstar traits does not mean superstar status. And that's what some Bulls fans are confused. Like, you guys will remember the guy that came in and was like, Caleb Wilson doesn't need development. It's like, okay, well, if you think that Caleb Wilson, who he is right now, is who's going to be the same in 3 or 4 years, then you're stupid, right? But when you look at it, even the comparisons to like Tracy McGrady and Kevin Garnett, those guys are Hall of Famers. And while, yes, they found a way to impact the game right away, they weren't themselves in years 1 and year 2. They developed as things went on, and continued success and continued development in the league is based on your way to continually add and progress in your game. For example, let's look at a player like Paolo Banchero. 2-3 years ago, people looked at Paolo Banchero as like he was going to be one of the next players up in the Eastern Conference. Now people are starting to look at it like, damn, could the Orlando Magic eventually have to trade Paolo if things don't go right? Like, that's how it is, because not to say that Paolo isn't still good. Paolo Banchero is a damn good player, and you can't take away from that. But some of the areas of his concerns and some of the areas of, again, who he has been as a player, you can't deny that he hasn't progressed in some areas, right? So it's about that steady progression that you always have to get there. Because even if you have an amazing rookie year, it doesn't mean you really arrive, not at the star status. And I think for many Bulls fans, we have to change our thinking too. If we need a franchise-altering talent. So even for Caleb Wilson, if he has an amazing rookie year, don't settle in that. And he's going to be the first one to tell you not to settle in that. He wants to win. He wants to win at a high level. He wants to impact winning. He wants to be a leader. So it's judged in different places, right? So when you look at some of the questions that are going to be there for Caleb Wilson in his rookie year, one, how much can he create or be a factor in the half court? Now, I do think some of the judgment on Caleb Wilson's half court game have got a bit overblown, right? But at the same time, I do think that scoring in the half court in the NBA is a lot different than scoring in the half court in college, even if you are an efficient half court scorer in college, right? So yes, transition scoring is going to be easier for him right away because it's an easier brand of scoring in general, right? Finishing and rebounding, those are going to be real because that is what Caleb Wilson and how he can impact the game right away. Half-court creation is usually where stars separate. So again, not necessarily just in the rookie year, but over the course of time, how does Caleb Wilson grow as a half-court creator, both for himself and for others? Does he learn how to attack those switches, right? Does he learn how to manipulate when help defense comes on, either for him to try to draw a foul, get his teammates open, those type of things? The consistency in which he hits pull-up jumpers is going to be a thing. There's a big difference from catch-and-shoot jumpers from pull-up jumpers. That's why, like, the guy that I had a conversation was like, players don't need other players to create for them. If they shoot, that means they'll create their own shot. It's like, no, you got to understand what goes into shooting, right? But also making the pass at the right time. That is something that's underrated. I know scoring sexy. We live in a scoring league. But when you understand when to make the pass, right? When you don't need to force it, that also is what separates you. When the first action dies down for this Bulls team and the ball finds Caleb Wilson, when it's in his hands, when the first action stagnates and falls, what does he do with it? That's what I'm going to be looking for a big part as the season goes on and the evaluation of that for him, and we'll see, right? Then next, the defensive tools versus defensive IQ conversation. Those are two different things. Caleb Wilson's defensive ceiling is amazing. He has all the tools in the world to be an amazing defender. The defensive IQ, though, is usually what takes it a step further, right? When you look at players like Alex Caruso that aren't the most athletic, aren't the biggest, aren't the strongest, but find ways to guard fours and fives at times, that's because of the defensive IQ, right? Same thing we saw with Lonzo Ball when he was healthy here and when he was guarding Jokic at times, right? Athletic blocks are not the same thing as complete defense. Steals aren't the same thing as complete defense. You have to understand when to stay disciplined on defense, how to avoid unnecessary fouls, recognizing rotations and when to hit that switch, right? And then, of course, navigating screens and pick and rolls, defending, again, finding ways to gamble on defense while then still not being caught out of position completely. And then the biggest part, and this is the part where I want to see Caleb Wilson's game grow from year 2 to year 3. I want to see him become that defensive quarterback, especially if he's not creating our offense in the half court, is that what are you calling out on the defensive side of the ball? How do you make the players on the on defense, when you're on defense, how do you help their game, not by you necessarily switching and helping them, but by communication on the defensive side of the ball, right? And then I think when you look at Tiago Splitter and Jordan Brink, this is where they can impact him the most at, turning those defensive tools and adding defensive IQ on that to make him a complete defender, and that's going to be there, right? And then the part of it that I think, too, is that the Bulls are not going to need Caleb Wilson to carry the team right away. For the Bulls fans, are like, oh, yeah, get him 16, 18 shots, like, or the guy that always leaves the comment that's like, the Bulls need to do everything in their power to make Caleb Wilson the Rookie of the Year. No, you play regular basketball, and you include him in the actions that make sense and let his play dictate that, right? So when you look at it, too, it's like you have the Norman Powell, who's going to be able to bail us out when we need it. We have Josh Giddey, who can create at a high level, right? We have Modest Buzelis, who is also going to grow in responsibility this year, right? Caleb is going to be about gradually adding more and more to him over the course of the season. That doesn't mean he's not going to have explosive moments. That doesn't mean he's not going to have games early on where he may even lead the Bulls in scoring in some games. But it's the responsibility, the day in and day out, that grows with availability and consistency and learning the game and adjusting to the NBA game for Caleb Wilson. And that's a perfectly fine thing, right? You don't grow a franchise player by just throwing the franchise on their shoulders in game one. That's not what you do. They didn't even do that for Derrick Rose. He took the reins as the season went on over his rookie year. And that may happen by the end of this year. I'm just saying, do not expect the first month of the season, Caleb Wilson to just be out there putting up 18, 19 shots per game, right? I think then you have to also look at it, the part of it that I'm going to keep drilling home because there's still some people that aren't there with it, right, is that it's Caleb plus Modest. It's not Caleb versus Modest. That's not where we are as a team. Caleb's emergence helps Modest. Modest's increased role in his efficiency, hopefully, and him making a leap helps Caleb Wilson. It's what those guys can become together that matters so much for this Bulls team. The better Caleb is, the easier Modest Buzelis' jobs become. The better Modest becomes, the easier and the less that Caleb Wilson also has to do as they goes on. They should be able to shoulder the load. Now, you'll figure out who's 1A, 1B, right? You figure out who's 1 and 2. You figure out who's a 1 and a 3. You figure all that out, right? The Bulls don't need this to be Caleb versus Modest. They need these guys to become together so they can have that foundation of what they're trying to build with their team, right? And that's it. I think that when you look at it, the hype around Caleb Wilson, Caleb is going to change things as it comes on. One elite NBA skill immediately, and that I think is going to be his defense. I think that's going to be it. There's evidence that the jumper is there and they're going to be really good there. There are flashes of being able to create, sustain two-way impact. These are things that you want to see from Caleb Wilson in his rookie year. And I think the part of this, too, that we have to talk some about is that if Caleb Wilson really becomes that guy, everything changes. The moment that Caleb Wilson really becomes the guy, it changes. That's it, right? If Caleb looks like a future perennial all-star, right? Bryson Graham's job changes as a GM of what he needs to find for this team. Tiago Splitter's coaching job changes, right? The Bulls then are no longer searching for the centerpiece. They found that, and they're building around that centerpiece, right? At that point, and you're searching for his co-star, which you may already have in the roster in the form of Modest Buzelis, or maybe it can become somebody else who is on the team or not on the team right now. A star doesn't just improve your roster. A star gives your rebuild the direction that it needs and a finality, hopefully, to that rebuild as well. And we'll see, right? Like, again, Caleb Wilson hype is real, and there's a reason for it to be there. And I love that the NBA world, again, is talking about a Chicago Bulls rookie. Let's go out there and let him prove it. And let's let him be there. Like, me seeing Caleb Wilson in person during Bulls Fest just reminded me as well, like, how skinny this kid really is. Like, don't get me wrong, he's jacked, but like Caleb Wilson is still very much in a teenage body, right? So, and he's going to add that to his frame over his first few years in the league. And who Caleb Wilson is right now, when you look at the physique and how that's going to change and how that's going to help him deal with the rigors of the NBA better, that's another thing to be excited about for this team as well. So we're going to see how that rolls and how that goes for this team. But with that said, I want to move into the second topic, right? I want to talk about this because it's been such a big talking point for a lot of Bulls content creators. Like, I was listening to an episode of CHGO, and it's like people are almost judging Bryson Graham by something that the league is telling us that right now, with the adjustment of the lottery rules, with the adjustment of the second tax apron, that's just not there. And again, no shot at anybody here, but just a real conversation. If you expected and you were trying to judge Bryson Graham's first offseason by how many salary dumps and first-round picks he was able to stack by taking salary dumps, you are not paying attention to the market and what the market has told us. If you expected, and again, it's not a bad thing because Bryson Graham mentioned it, that they would be open to absorbing bad contracts if it meant that they can stack picks, right? And it sounds easy in theory, and therefore that's why so many content creators like to talk about it, because it's easy, and a lot of content creators don't actually like to go deep because they don't have the time, the know-how, or the desire to actually provide a consistent and, thought-provoking analysis. But nonetheless, that's why I'm here, right? The 2026 market showed that it's not really worked that way. And it's not just for the Chicago Bulls. It's not like Bryson Graham was sitting on his hands and wasn't able to do that. It just wasn't there. Very few players move strictly for financial reasons with first-round picks attached to them. They just did not, right? And so when you look at it, Graham cannot accept deals that nobody offered around the NBA. Like, you just can't accept that. So blaming Bryson Graham for failing to take on salary dumps that weren't available just seems asinine to me, and seems like more of a case that you want to complain about something rather than actually look at what happened. And I think for a lot of Bulls fans, and again, content creators, you're judging Bryson Graham by what the old market was and not really understanding what this market was this year. And maybe it's going to be going forward. We'll see. The NBA's financial ecosystem has fundamentally changed this year, right? It's fair to want more picks. You should want more picks and more bites at the apple. It's fair to expect flexibility to become assets. It's fair to want those things. But it's not fair to say that Bryson Graham failed because he did not collect 3 first-round picks from deals that fundamentally just did not exist. The league moved to more seconds, swaps, cash, and basketball value trades. That's what this offseason has told us about it. The classic bad money plus first deal, it became rare this offseason. So the question is, why didn't Bryson Graham take the first? It's that, where was the first? And if you look around the league, the first wasn't really around in the same way. But this is it. Like, future firsts are more valuable than ever now, and we got to talk about it. The new lottery system makes future picks more volatile, meaning that teams that would have been in that middle of the pack area that probably would have traded it for a player to get them over the top, they now are going to have a chance to legitimately win the lottery more than the bottom 3 teams, right? And so a down season become more dangerous for a team if you trade future first-round picks, right? Teams are going to be less willing to trade to attach first-round picks just to save money right now, and that means that teams like Chicago, the flexibility is harder to monetize in the same old way that we've done before. Look at pick protections as well. They also got harder in regards to it. The new protection rules make salary dumps through first-round picks even harder to structure, meaning that teams could no longer use mid-level protections on newly traded picks, which, again, it affects the way that you do those things. Those protections used to help teams feel safer in attaching a first-round pick to a deal. Without them, teams are pivoting towards second-round picks for swaps and cash as well. And I tell you this, if you're complaining about a trade and you say, well, a couple of second-round picks would have made it better, it doesn't really do that. Teams are being smarter about bad contracts. That's just what we're seeing happening, right? Toxic contracts are becoming less common as teams adapt to the second tax apron. They're becoming less and less common. They're always going to be there because there's always going to be a player that doesn't live up to the hype or live up to the expectations or gets injured, right? But front offices now are careful with the length, the team options, and partial guarantees on deals, right? And that's what Bryson Graham has done with the same with Norman Powell, Zach Collins, right? He structured those deals where he can get out of them in case they do become bad contracts. Shorter commitments and movable structures, it makes it be more intentional in that case, right? And if fewer bad contracts exist, that means that there's going to be fewer chance to take those first-round picks to get that. If every team starts avoiding the bad, toxic money that we saw 5-6 years ago, then that means there's less toxic money to take on and thus less picks to absorb for that toxic money. So we got to stop saying that Bryson Graham's plan failed, because people in our thinking must evolve. And this is why, like, when I was in conversations with Doug Tonis, no shot. Doug Tonis is one of my favorite. Been listening to him literally since I was a teenager. No shot at Doug. But when you look at, like, when people don't understand that flexibility now has such a value and optionality still has such a value, because you need to have multiple paths when you build it, right? The salary dump route has become less available than what it did before. That doesn't mean that Bryson Graham failed in the offseason, because good front offices adjust to what the market is telling you and prepare for different outcomes. That's what Bryson Graham has done, right? So again, when you look at it, don't weaponize flexibility just for show. And I think there are a lot of people in this community that want the show of it all rather than actually look at it. So I think when you look at Bryson Graham's first offseason, how I personally want to judge it is this. Did we have a clear direction? Yes. Do we add high ceiling young talent? And don't give me that shit. Well, Caleb Wilson was clearly going to be the fourth overall pick. Okay, it doesn't matter. You still added a player with high ceiling to this team. Yes, in Caleb Wilson. And Dalen Swain could still be that. He's going to have to work and prove it. Was future flexibility preserved? Yes, it was. Did you build a better development environment? You hope so. Jordan Brink and Tiago Splitter, you hope that's going to have that. And then was your future optionality maintained? And yes, it was. The work is not finished, but you don't lock yourself into bad contracts, which the Bulls did not do. They didn't lose optionality in either draft picks or future flexibility, because, again, they have max level cap space and they could keep all the good players and still add a max level free agent next offseason if they did too. You're not going to solve everything in the summer. So no, Bryson Graham didn't solve everything this summer. He never was going to, but he gave it a direction, and that's the thing. Flexibility is not an accomplishment, though, forever. You have to eventually turn that flexibility into something. It's a tool, not a trophy. And we got to see what Bryson Graham is going to use that flexibility to turn into. And I think as well is that the Bulls have created value in new ways. When you look at the plan B, right? The distressed assets internally. Norman Powell, Jalen Smith, Isaac Okoro, Nick Claxton, all could have value rebounds on this team. And if not, you don't have long-term money attached to any of those guys, which gives you future optionality and flexibility. Then can you use the second-round picks, the stash that we build up? Do you use that creatively to add or do something with eventually rather than just trade them? That's a big question there as well, right? Do you become a third team with the flexibility that you have left at the deadline to maybe add a player or add a piece? We'll see what happens into that. And then develop young players and develop trade value in some other players as well, and we'll see. I think that's going to be the thing, and they're going to let the emergence and the growth of Caleb and Modest really dictate what's going to happen and what's going to go forward for this team, and that's it. And I do think that Caleb Wilson, Modest Buzella's growth, Josh Giddey's growth, it changes your asset strategy right away with what you want to do with those assets. We just got to see what's going to happen. If Caleb lives up to the hype as we talked about, the timeline changes. If Modest makes that leap, the timeline changes. If Giddey fits in with those guys, like on paper it seems like he's going to do, it accelerates some things. So we got to see. Those are ifs, not certainties, but we got to see how that's going to work out for those guys. And Bryson Graham may eventually stop collecting picks and start trading some of those. And if that happens, when it happens, what are the assets that he's acquiring with that? That's what makes the difference. And that's what we'll see what the Chicago Bulls do. So just wanted to talk about that a little bit. But I also want to end on this. So the Sports Business Journal put out an article that the NBA planned to partner with YouTube for local streaming and coverage of 29 of the 30 NBA teams. The NBA is reportedly hoping for a $1.2 billion deal that would, in a lot of ways, make local NBA media obsolete, right? So when you look at it, for example, right now, the local TV show that you can, or TV channel you can watch Bulls on is CHSN. And that network carries Bulls games across its complete broadcast territory, which includes Illinois and the surrounding states, part of their surrounding states. If the league does create this kind of nationwide streaming hub on YouTube, that would tell fans that your local team's regional sports aren't going to be on, they'll still be on CHSN, but you don't have to rely on that. You can go to YouTube and watch those games. So I think for someone in Chicago, if you're looking at what that means for the teams, it means that the Bulls games will be available through NBA streaming subscription rather than you needing to subscribe to CHSN, which I know a lot of people would actually love, right? And that's going to be the thing. You wouldn't have to subscribe to CHSN or Fubo TV or DirecTV. You would be able to get it all through the YouTube. I think it's going to be YouTube TV subscription. And so that could be a legitimate migration that we could see that completely shift. It would be another insert of money for NBA teams while also affecting local media, which it's kind of seemed like it may die out at some point sooner rather than later. But I wanted to bring that up because it could become a big talking point here over the next year. And it would change a lot of the ways that we watch games, and especially fans that are local in Chicago and the way that they watch games. So let me know what you guys think on that part down below. But that's going to do it for today's episode, man. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you sound off in the comment section on all the topics. Kayla Wilson's hype, the Bryson Graham judgment based on stacking picks, all those type of things. Let us know that down below. Make sure you guys follow us at Bull Central Pod on every social media platform. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, and we'll catch you guys, the next time I make a video. Love you guys. Go Bulls. See red, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.